Hey guys, I have breaking news. Donald Trump is planning to put up Kash Patel to lead the FBI. This is a shocking development, and I was actually live on MSNBC with my colleague Sam Stein when it came across the transom. And so I'm going to play for you our initial reactions live on TV, but I want to set the table for you before we get to that clip. This is a really troubling choice. There has been a tradition inside the FBI of independence post-Watergate. There are a lot of reforms after Watergate, after the Hoover era, where the FBI was acting as, kind of a special armed forces, a special operations branch for the president. And instead, kind of replacing it as an independent organization that focused on counterterrorism and focused on law enforcement. And so this will be the second time that Donald Trump has kind of broken those new norms. FBI directors are usually have been appointed to 10-year terms, and then they get replaced regardless of what party the next president is from. Donald Trump in his first term fired Jim Comey to much uproar, replacing him with Christopher Wray, despite the fact that that was totally without modern precedent. And that there was outrage at the choice of Donald Trump to do that for his own political ends. Wray, as a replacement, was at least like a respectable person, an institutionalist, people that the agents, could respect and trust to lead, the bureau. That is not what has happened this time. Now he's fired Christopher Wray, the person he picked, and he's replacing him with a clown in Kash Patel. And he's replacing him with somebody that is not qualified for this job, that has not been an agent, that has not, gained the respect and trust of colleagues, that has not demonstrated that they can be in a leadership role managing other law enforcement officials. And he was a attorney for Devin Nunes on the Hill. He did do some counterterrorism operations for Trump in the first administration, so there is some experience there. But as far as management experience, trust, independence, and this is a person that does podcast hits on Steve Bannon's podcast wearing a MAGA hat. He has his own cryptocurrency, K money sign H. This is a person that is not qualified for this job in any way, shape, or form. And if you don't believe me, I want to read a quote to you about Kash Patel before we get to some of our other reactions on MSNBC. We were also with favorite of the pod, Tom Nichols, so you get to hear a little bit from him. Here's a passage from somebody within the Trump administration writing about Donald Trump's plans at the time to install Kash Patel as just the deputy director of the FBI. And what they thought about that. The president then started advancing the idea of appointing Kash Patel as deputy FBI director. Patel, who was completing a stint as deputy to acting director of national intelligence Rick Grenell, had been a staffer to Congressman Devin Nunes and had served briefly on the NSC staff at the White House under Trump. I categorically opposed making Patel deputy FBI director. I told Mark Meadows it would happen over my dead body. Who is this person that I'm reading this quote from? Not some lib, not some never Trumper. This is Bill Barr. That is from Bill Barr's book. Bill Barr said that Patel would be deputy FBI director over his dead body. Let me explain why. He writes, in the first place, all leadership positions in the Bureau, except the director, have always been FBI agents. They've all gone through the same agent training and have had broad experience in the field and at headquarters. Someone with no background as an agent would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. Furthermore, Patel had virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency. Let me read that again. Bill Barr says, furthermore, Patel had virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency. He goes on, the Bureau already has an exceptionally able deputy, and then he closes with this. The very idea of moving Patel into a role like this showed a shocking detachment from reality. That's Bill Barr. I don't know what more needs to be said, like what more I could say that is worse than that. I guess I could point out that he was a key component in Donald Trump's effort to attempt a coup at the end of his first term. That there's alarming stories about his behavior inside the White House and how he put our military at risk. I'm going to talk to Elena Plott Calabro over at The Atlantic for Monday's podcast, who wrote a profile on Patel, and we'll get into that story and others more deeply. I could talk about how he said he'd target journalists. But I just think that Bill Barr talking about how absurd it is to appoint this person, even deputy FBI director, is all you need to know. How does a Republican senator look at that and say, well, I just think he should be FBI director? We'll see. We will see. All right, guys. It was interesting to be on live TV for this. I'm like a bad luck angel. Maybe I shouldn't do TV anymore. I was on TV when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. I was on TV when they called this election for Donald Trump. I was on TV when Joe Biden said he was stepping down. It's been a year, I guess, for me. So you can watch Sam ably hosting and taking the news that comes in and the initial reactions from me and Tom Nichols up next in the clip. And then on Monday, I'll have, as I mentioned, Elena Plott Calabro, who has profiled Kash Patel, and to give us more information about him, and we'll get reaction from Bill Kristol. So we will see you all back here then on Monday. But first, check us out on the TV.
Welcome back. President-elect Donald Trump announced via Truth Social moments ago that he is nominating former Chief of Staff to the Secretary of Defense under the first Trump administration, Kash Patel, to be the next director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Now, Patel had several other notable roles during the first Trump term. What's notable here is that Christopher Wray, who Donald Trump chose as FBI head in 2017 after firing James Comey, Christopher Wray has not yet finished his 10-year term. So Trump would have to fire him in order to get Kash Patel into that post. Tom and Tim are back with me to unpack all of this. Look, Tom, we were talking in the last block about this. Among his other faults, Kash Patel is a conspiracy theorist, and he would be another one in a line of them who would be going to the Trump administration should he be confirmed. And he also was an organizer or a key component of the J6 insurrection. I mean, what does it say about having that type of personality in your next term? It just completely obliterates any recognition or culpability for anyone who was involved in that riot, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Donald Trump's been trying to erase history and retcon that whole business into, just another day in Washington. And unfortunately, he's been somewhat successful trying to memory hole at least some of it. But Patel is, and I think Tim is absolutely right, when it comes to the danger to our democracy, Patel is about as dangerous as it gets. Not because he's that much of a true believer in anything, but because, and I would recommend that people take a look at a piece that we had about him in The Atlantic. He believes in nothing except serving Donald Trump, except his own interest. And what you're going to see is Donald Trump creating an administration of people who really don't care about the interests of the United States, that they're there to build an authoritarian cadre and to put themselves beyond the reach of the rule of law. And if you want to be beyond the reach of the rule of law, one of the first things you're going to want to capture is the FBI. Because the other thing this says, putting Patel there, it says the FBI is no longer in the law enforcement business. It's certainly not in the counterintelligence business, which our enemies will be very happy to hear. It's in the business of protecting Donald Trump, furthering Donald Trump's interests, and making sure that Donald Trump's enemies are investigated and that Donald Trump's friends are given a free pass. I mean, this is really, I suppose if we still had the ability to be shocked, it's shocking, but I think this is something many of us saw coming, and, shouldn't be that surprising. But it's an incredibly dangerous development.
Tom, I'm impressed that you retain the ability to be shocked. Tim, I want to read this part of the Washington Post write-up of the Kash Patel nomination. It reads as this. Patel has publicly mused about targeting journalists and government officials, and he published a list of, quote, deep state names in a book last year titled, quote, Government Gangsters. Promotional materials for the book included a quote from Trump, who called it a roadmap highlighting every corrupt actor and a blueprint to help us take back the White House and remove these gangsters from all of government. So I don't want to bend your mind in uncomfortable ways, Tim, but paint what a FBI under Kash Patel might look like, knowing what he has written and what Trump has endorsed.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably more direct and worse than how the Washington Post put it there. He hasn't mused really about targeting journalists and political foes. He's said it absolutely explicitly and with relish, often on Steve Bannon's podcast and other kind of MAGA media sources. So in addition to the book that you mentioned, so this is somebody that is planning to target Donald Trump's political foes, the people, prosecute the prosecutors. This is also something that Pam Bondi said that she'd planned to do. So I think that the people that were, that were investigating Donald Trump, using completely open reasons, going to grand juries, playing this by the book. Nonetheless, I think that they can expect to be targeted by this incoming administration. And I think the other thing, in addition to targeting people that they think are not loyal within the government, career officials, I think that this is also, they want people to quit. Right. There is a notion of, if you are a senior FBI official, like the idea that you're going to have to report to somebody like Kash Patel, who has absolutely no business being the director of the FBI, who does not have the career record, does not have the experience, has not gained the trust of the people that work there. I think that there will be, an exodus. Or at least there will be a thought. And I think that the Trump administration is hoping that people leave. And I think, unfortunately, we're going to have to hope that some of these people stay in what is going to be a pretty uncomfortable bureau.
Yeah, Tom, let's talk a little bit about going back to the James Comey firing, because when that happened, it was an uproar. It was deeply, deeply problematic for a lot of people in D.C. And Trump responded by ultimately selecting Chris Wray, a guy who had the backing of Chris Christie, an institutionalist, someone who was totally fine for the vast majority of all of the Republican Party. This go around, he's not going on that roadmap. He's obviously going with the most loyal person he could possibly have. What do you think that says about the Trump presidency 2.0?
One thing that I think is really clear, first of all, he believes he has a mandate. He won by a small margin, but for him, he thinks this is, an absolute license to rule at will. The other thing, I think, is that he feels very strongly that he can just push this Republican Senate around, that there is nobody left in the Republican and he may be right. But he feels that there's nobody left among senior elected Republican officials who's going to dare to stop him. Now, I hope he's wrong about that. And I'm hoping that, he is finally, I think with Matt Gaetz, he went too far and it was clear it wasn't going to happen. And I hope now, again, people in the Republican Party and in the Senate especially are going to remember that they are the Article 1 branch of government that tells the president he can't do stuff like this. But he feels strongly that he's got a mandate and that the Republican Party and its elected officials are his to push around at will. And that's, again, that's really dangerous. And you can see that he's been kind of numbing us toward this. He's been paralyzing the system he starts off with Marco Rubio and, a few other incredible nominations, and then it gets worse and worse and worse. And he's been, I think, this nomination's been out there for a long time, but he wanted, in true Trump fashion, wanted to exhaust everybody, wear them out. And I think your question, Sam, about whether the Senate has the spine to take down multiple nominees is a really good question, because he is trying to flood them with completely unqualified and dangerous nominees to see, how many of them manage to get through.